Hi everyone, welcome back. And today we have David again every Sunday, and we are talking about a fear of rejection. So definitely ask your questions. It's going to be a very interesting one. Yeah, feel free to ask questions, loads of questions, because we're reading them. Got my questions up. Oh, he's here. Hi.
Hi, good evening. How are
Good
you doing?
evening. I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Good. This is an exciting topic, and this actually was second voted because we had three. The first was last week, and
Emotional eating.
eating. Then everyone asked for fear of rejection, which is this week, and then was insomnia. So this should be a popular.
This is a biggie.
It is.
It's a biggie.
As I said, I don't know too much on it, so I'm excited to learn.
Okay.
Right, should we start? Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, hang on. Right. Firstly, how do you know if you've got a fear of rejection?
Well, if you have a fear of being pushed away, you have a fear of not getting the love or attention that you need in certain situations or relationships, that's when you know that you have a fear of rejection.
And where, like, obviously, I knew you were going to say childhood, but where does it actually stem from?
It comes from childhood, but it is such a complicated issue. It really, really is. And, it displays itself in adults in many ways. Um, for example, people have a fear of public speaking, specifically if they're talking sometimes to males, sometimes a fear of talking in front of senior people.
Mm-hmm.
This goes back to early memories. And like people have a fear of giving presentations at work. This is a fear of rejection. And
What?
that's in its simplest form.
So in case it doesn't go well, basically.
Yeah, and in case that you mess up and people don't like you and they say bad things about you.
So in your experience, what actually normally is the cause of a fear of rejection?
It all comes down to, as we said, learned behavior. We've discussed this over the past few weeks. It always comes down to very, very early childhood memories.
But how can you avoid giving your child a fear of rejection?
It's tricky. It's really tricky. I'll give you an example. In certain religions, in certain
Sorry,
cultures, if the first
sorry, I got a phone call. Sorry.
okay, if the firstborn is a boy, that boy in some cultures, in some religions, becomes the golden child and becomes the favored child. If then a daughter comes along and she feels she doesn't live up to the same expectations as the boy, then that might cause her to have a fear of rejection.
So
Conversely,
comparison.
conversely, if the firstborn is a girl, and for the first 2, 3 years of her life, she's the only child, and then suddenly the golden boy comes along, that can then cause that child to have a fear of rejection because all the attention is now being diverted to the son. And that's a very simple example.
Right.
But let me give you some more examples of how it displays itself as an adult. If something happens when a child is young, it can lead them to have poor self-confidence. It can lead them to be a perfectionist. I deal mainly every day with people who are perfectionists, who have a fear of failure, and they have a fear of embarrassment. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a perfectionist and wanting to do things right, but if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, if there is a fear behind this perfectionism, and
Right.
I'm not talking about doing things accurately or efficiently, I'm talking about what's going on behind the scenes where there's a fear if you're not perfect and if you do perceive that you failed.
So is it having to be perfect just in case you get rejected? Is that
Yes.
so
Yes.
having things in place to ensure that you don't feel that rejection.
Yes.
Interesting.
Let me give you some more examples.
Go for it.
Social anxiety, a fear of being in a social situation where you get rejected. So people who have a fear of rejection sometimes have a fear of going into a social situation just in case they get rejected.
Okay, so what do you define as rejected?
Rejected is where you're not getting the attention or the love or the support that you think you want.
So would people define rejection differently depending on like their experience? Like is it like what someone might view as rejection, someone else may not?
Yeah, and there are many reasons why people feel that they get rejected. Whether it's lack of love, or if they're at work and they feel they're not getting the recognition for their work,
right?
Or if it's in a relationship and they're not getting back what they're putting in. So there's many different reasons.
Right. And someone's asked a question. I'm the biggest people pleaser. Would you say this is a fear of rejection? I would honestly do things I hate to please people.
That was the next thing on my list. I was literally about to say, people pleasers are people who have a fear of rejection. People pleasers say yes all the time, even if it's to their detriment. And this comes from a fear of rejection. There was a lady who I treated a long time ago. She was a PA. And every night at 5 to 5, her boss would push a load of work across the desk and say, "Oh, Mary, before you go home tonight, can you do that?" Every night she said yes. So we did some sessions and we worked out some stuff that had happened to her when she was young. And the next Wednesday, she had tickets for the theatre. So at 5 to 5, her boss said to her, "Oh, Mary, before you go, can you do this?" And she said, "No." He said, "What?" She said, "No, I've got theatre tickets. But do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come in tomorrow morning at 7:30, and by the time you come in at 9, all this will be done." He said, "Would you really do that for me?" So she said yes. And she got a pay rise. So the interesting thing was that she was a people pleaser and she said yes, yes, yes all the time, but she was not getting any recognition for it. But she just had to not upset her boss, had to not, her fear was to not please her boss.
Wow. Can I ask you a question? I was just listening to a podcast with Ashley Graham, who if those who are watching, everyone listen to her podcast. She's amazing. Anyway, she was interviewing a woman, I've forgotten her name, but they were talking about codependency. And so I didn't know too much about codependency, but it's crazy. But a part of it is people pleasing. So the examples they gave were like, for instance, in a relationship, doing anything that their partner wants. So if the partner likes Mexican food, I like Mexican food. Whatever you want makes me happy. That kind of thing, where you lose yourself in another person. Is that a form of a fear of rejection?
100%. 100%.
Wow. How weird then that I was just listening. I was literally just listening to that.
Okay.
Wow.
A fear of relationships, a fear of falling in love is a huge, huge topic and something that I deal with most days. There are some people that choose the wrong, let's imagine there's a lady who chooses the wrong guys. She chooses the guys that drink, that take drugs, that don't support her, that stay out all night, and she does nothing about it. Why doesn't she do anything about it? Even though all her friends are saying, "What are you doing with that loser?" Why doesn't she do anything about it?
I don't know.
Because she has a fear of being rejected. And she knows if she stays with this guy, he's safe. This guy's safe.
But what if she breaks up with him? That's not rejection.
No, she's breaking up with him. She's taking control.
Oh yeah,
But she's not going to stay with this guy forever. But she's in control, and she knows at any time she can end the relationship, and then she moves on to the next guy. That's her being in control. Now we all have post-it notes stuck on our head. Okay. And it says who we are and what we're looking for. So when we walk into a bar or a party, we're advertising who we are and what we're looking for. But some people who come to see me might say, "Hi, I'm Mary, I'm desperate. I'm looking for a man. Please don't reject me. I don't care what you do to me, but never leave me. Now, these post-it notes are invisible, but through your body language, a guy in a bar or a party can actually read those post-it notes. And they're attracted to that particular lady. But she's fine with that temporarily because she's in control. The problem happens when she falls in love. And that's when the anxiety really kicks in.
Have you ever seen Grey's Anatomy?
No.
So in Grey's Anatomy, the main character, Meredith, starts seeing this guy. Anyway, she's had a huge childhood trauma and everything. And she always says she, in her own words, messed up. But she has this massive fear of commitment and rejection that she ends up sabotaging it. They end up together, but she goes through a while of sabotaging the relationship. So I guess it's there, like in all TV shows,
But
labeled as a fear of rejection.
It's so common, and it's something I deal with every day. And people have a dread of being in a relationship that could then subsequently lead to a very long-term relationship.
So obviously you say that it stems in childhood behavior or experience, but if you go along life and you're fine, and then let's say a girl or a guy gets cheated on when they're, let's say, 18 and they're heartbroken, can that not trigger a fear of future rejection?
It depends what happened to the person when they were very young, how they react. If we took 100 girls at the age of 18 and they were cheated on, would you agree that all 100 girls would react differently?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
Different personalities, I guess.
I mean, there will be some that will be absolutely distraught, and there would be others that would say, yeah, bye, good riddance. I'm now going to go and look for somebody else.
Yeah, true.
So something happened beforehand that causes a person to react in that way at 18 years old.
Interesting. So it is all dependent on your childhood.
Yeah, there's a lady who I treated before lockdown, and she's an advertising executive, and she's always chosen the wrong guys. Always. The guys that her friends say, you've got to be crazy, you've got to get out of the relationship. But she says, I'm in control, and she stays with them for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then she dumps them. But the problem is that she now met a guy, a really, really nice guy. And she's freaking out, absolutely freaking out. And the nicer he is to her, and he's a lovely, lovely guy, the nicer he is to her, the more she's panicking. And what really tipped her over the edge was this guy has 2 daughters from a previous marriage, and one of them said, we love you, can we start to call you mummy? Well, that was it. She absolutely freaked out.
But I don't understand, because that's a really do you know what I mean? Like that's a nice situation that she's in. So what has to happen for her to freak out about that? Like, because
it's too dangerous, Zoe.
But
based upon previous experience, something happened to her when she was young that causes her to have a fear of being rejected.
But what has to happen? Not in her case, but like generally, what happens where that makes them run? Like, is it that they got left as a child, or?
There's many reasons. I'll go through a few examples in a moment. But to actually be in a loving relationship really freaks these people out. That they're frightened to go down that road because they're on guard, and they know that if they let go of they take the brakes off and go into that relationship, there is a danger that that person can subsequently reject them
and hurt them.
Yeah, so there's always this protection, this barrier that prevents them going that extra mile.
Wow, that's crazy.
We have a question coming in. Can you see that? I can't quite read it.
So would you say fear of rejection can turn into codependency? Like, for example, a 25-year-old girl still needing her mum more than a normal 25-year-old should?
Yeah. because that's a fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment, a fear of loneliness. And that does come from very, very early memories. There was talking about very early memories, a lady I treated a while ago, she remembered whilst she was in hypnosis, she said, I think I've just been born. It feels really weird. I feel I've just been born and I've been laid on my mum's chest. And suddenly I've been pulled away from my mum and thrown onto a table. And then she came out of hypnosis. She said, that was really scary, really, really scary. She said, I don't know why my mum didn't want me. So she spoke to her mum after the session, and her mum said, I'll tell you exactly what happened. She said, I had a kind of a heart attack just immediately after birth. They laid you on me, and suddenly I started convulsing. So the nurse did rip you off of my chest, and she did put you on a side table, and then they started working on me. So she said, yeah, that's true. She said, but Mum, I thought you didn't want me anymore. I thought you didn't love me. No, I know this is a very, very early memory. This is, when you're a few minutes old, but it's a child's perception of that particular situation.
That's really sad.
I'll give you another example. When I'm 64 now, so in like the mid-60s, there was a policy amongst midwives called minimal handling. If a child was born following a prolonged labour, maybe the child was born by forceps, when the child finally came out, it was believed that because the child had been yanked around so much, the child needed some peace. So what they did was they used to put one hand here of the baby, the other hand there, and then they used to wrap them very tightly in a blanket called swaddling. And then they used to put them in the far corner of the nursery for a few hours, just so they could settle down. Big mistake. Because those children are now the people that are coming for treatment who have a fear of being abandoned or fear of being rejected.
Right.
But it's obviously, when a baby recalls these things, it's a very crude form of memory. But there's this fear of being pulled out of mum into the real world, and no one wants me, no one loves me.
Because they now do skin to skin, right? Is that why?
So are they what? I didn't hear what you said.
Skin to skin.
Skin to skin.
Is that why?
Yeah, because the mother acts as well as the love. There's the thermos. It's like a thermostat. There was a case in Australia a few years ago, and in Australia it's something called the Joey principle. Now a Joey is a baby kangaroo.
Right, and it lives in the pocket of the.
It lives in the pocket. So there was a case where twins were born, and one of the twins died immediately after birth. So the mother had one twin here, and the mother said, please, can I have my other baby? They said, but the baby, she said, give me that. So she's got the two babies. Guess what happened after 10 minutes? The baby that had died came back to life. It was fully documented in the press, because the mother, it's like the thermostat. So the mother put the temperature back into the baby, and the baby survived.
What? When was that?
This was a few years ago in Australia. I can't remember when, but it's you can find it.
Oh my gosh!
So skin to skin contact immediately on birth is absolutely crucial.
Because they're also doing it with the fathers, aren't they?
Yeah, it's very, very important.
So do you think, like, so obviously, so in my degree, I have a degree in early childhood education, and we talk about attachment. So obviously, would you say the likelihood of someone with a like they call it an insecure attachment, they're more likely to have a fear of rejection versus someone that has a secure attachment? Or is it literally just depends what happened? They could be in the happiest household possible, but if a child's literally, like, let's say the child's left for 1 minute, but in the child's mind, mummy's gone. Yeah. They just popped out to say hello to a friend, and they just said, wait there, as a 4-year-old, wait on the stairs. But even though it may have been 60 seconds for a child.
One of the most common things that comes up when someone's in hypnosis with the fear of rejection is they're a young baby, it's nighttime, they're in their cot, and they're crying for their mum. And mummy is not coming. And this is what they're thinking. Whilst they're in hypnosis, they're thinking, mummy's not coming. And I said, well, Is mummy coming? And no, I'm never going to see my mummy again. That's the child's perception. So if a baby cries, if a young baby cries, I'm sure most people have read that there are some child psychologists that say, no, leave a baby crying for 7 minutes. That's absolute nonsense. Because in that time, the baby thinks that the mother is never, ever going to come back again.
Right.
So if a child is in...
Could you not argue that if you keep going back to the child, they'll know every time I cry, mummy comes, and they'll play up?
But you know your child. You
Right.
know your child when it's hungry, when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's not well. So these perceptions of a young child then get carried forward into adulthood.
Wow. And it's crazy how early these things happen. So
Yeah.
even if a child have a really secure attachment and they're in a very happy household, they can still form a fear of rejection.
They can still, yeah.
And does it have to be from the parent? Could it be even in nursery?
Yeah, and anyone that is perceived to be close to that child, who they depend upon, who they look up to. And that's why I've said to you, working in a nursery is the most important job in the world. It's the most responsible job because, you have the responsibility to shape that child's life. It's very important. Talking about birth, the number of people that are put into an incubator when they're born for medical reasons. And
could that give you claustrophobia?
I've never had anyone with a fear of claustrophobia based upon an incubator, but what the incubator does do is they feel that they're separated from their mum. They feel disconnected. And this sometimes leads to a fear of rejection.
Wow. So it wouldn't just manifest itself in adult, like a romantic relationship, but friendships, I assume, and anything at all where a person feels that they could be rejected or not get the love or attention that they want. So how do you, I guess, recover from this? And is there like a cure?
By seeing it again, by truly understanding what happened in that particular situation, it then allows, which is what happens when you're in hypnosis, it then allows you to bring that behavior forward into adulthood, but the correct interpretation, not the perception of a young child.
Wow.
But I'll give you another example. Imagine that there are two siblings, a little boy and a little girl. And the boy is very, very bright, very academic, very capable. And I'm talking about a very small child. And then the sister comes along, and the sister perhaps needs a little bit more help. Perhaps isn't as bright or isn't as independent. So the parents switch all of their attention to the daughter. And what they say to the son is, you're fine, you'll be okay, he's bright, Johnny's great, he's going to do great things in this world. So you think that Johnny's taking care of himself, but unfortunately, there's a cost to it. Because he's fine, he's bright, he's independent, but he's not getting the attention that he needs.
Right.
So sometimes in that particular case, that boy will turn to bad behavior to get attention, because negative attention is the same as positive attention.
Wow.
It's still attention. So then he might start to misbehave.
So would you say attention seeking is a sign of a fear of rejection?
Yes.
Wow.
And it can be negative. A lot of people, they talk about ADHD and stuff like that. But perhaps it's just attention seeking because that person feels they're not getting the love or support.
And can I ask you a question? So when we covered emetophobia, I think you said it's rooted in fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, and fear of loneliness.
Yes.
So what else can a fear of rejection come out in, if that makes sense?
As I said, social anxiety. And it's interesting when we talk about lockdown, there are people who are in lockdown who are very, very scared about coming out of lockdown.
Right.
Because whilst they're in lockdown, they don't need to go to a pub, they don't need to go to a party, they don't need to go out to a restaurant with their friends, so they're safe. But as we're now heading, towards these restrictions being lifted, I'm getting more and more phone calls from people saying, look, I was kind of okay when we were in lockdown, but now we've got to start thinking about, coming out into the real world, and I'm going to have to go back into the pub and into restaurants and mix with people, and I'm really scared.
So I'm just thinking, like, let's say you get a new relationship and it's time to meet the parents. Someone with a fear of rejection, that's a massive thing for them, and I'm assuming they cut it off before it got to that point, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you something. I've lost my train of thought. It will come back to me. What was it?
Okay. All right. If you remember, we'll come back to it.
It's going to annoy me. It just came to me with what you were saying anyway.
Okay. Another reason that people have a fear of rejection is where unreasonable targets are set by parents for a performance. I had a girl, she got 11 A stars at GCSE. I said, that's amazing. She said, well, it worked. I said, what do you mean it worked? She said, well, my dad patted me on the shoulder and said, well done. So she said, I guess it worked because he gave me some attention for a moment. 11 A stars? And she got a pat on the shoulder. I think she deserved a bit more than a pat on the shoulder.
Wow.
Let me tell you one of my favorite case histories. This guy came to see me, an Indian gentleman. This was a couple of years ago. And he said, I've got a sensation in my chest. Did I ever tell you the story about? He said, I've got a sensation in my chest. I've had every test possible, scans, X-rays. They tell me there's nothing there, but there's something there. So we did some sessions, and whilst he's in hypnosis, he said, I've just remembered something, but it's a nothing. I said, tell me. He said, I'm about 6, and I'm in the lounge with my baby brother. He's 4, and we're playing with Lego bricks. And I built my Lego bricks to here, and my baby brother has built his Lego brick tower to there. And Daddy's walked in and said to me, oh, come on. Look, he's only 4. Look how tall his Lego bricks are compared with yours. At which point he was sitting in the chair in hypnosis. He said, I've got to open my eyes. This is too scary. I've got to open my eyes. I said, open your eyes. And he said, that was the scariest moment of my life. And then he started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? He said, this is a load of nonsense. He said, this cannot be to do with a pile of Lego bricks. I said, how's your chest? He said, no way. No way is this lump I've had in my chest for all my life. He said, this cannot be to do with the pile of Lego bricks. And then words started coming out of his mouth. I'm 30, my little brother's 28. I'm training to do loads of different things. I keep doing courses and then dropping out. My brother is an accountant in Dad's company. I'm still living at home. He's got a beautiful house with a lovely wife with 2 daughters. I'm still driving my mum's car. I don't have a girlfriend. He's ordered a new Mercedes. He said to me, where are these words coming from? I said, well, we've obviously tapped into something.
Wow.
Now, the interesting thing was that he's always wanted to be an accountant. What was it in his subconscious that was preventing him?
The fear.
Yeah, the fear.
Because he was always compared to his brother. Wow.
Yeah. And he had a fear of training to be an accountant and then subsequently being rejected. So all of that came from a pile of Lego bricks. But I'll give you an even simpler example. My sons both used to swim competitively for the county. And we used to sit poolside, and I used to watch all the mums and dads there, and they were sitting there with stopwatches and clipboards, and I thought, this is not good, because they were just putting too much pressure on the children. And you just know that if a child came second instead of coming first, that then they were going to get the look, or they were going to get told off, or they weren't going to get the hug. So something as simple as that, where a parent is there to apparently support, but then going completely over the top and setting much too high targets.
Mm-hmm.
And this once again is very, very common. Yeah, and it happens a lot in America, where I think that the expectations are set far too high. I'm a great believer in setting achievable targets. Once that target's been achieved, then you complement, and then you set another target that is achievable. But if you start setting targets that are too high and the person doesn't achieve that particular target, then that leads to subsequent fears taking into adulthood.
I remembered my question.
Okay.
So, would you say that someone with a fear of rejection are generally shy, or are they confident to overcompensate?
No, they pretend they're confident. These are the people that shout a lot, that talk very loudly, that put on a brave face. And if you look very closely at their body language, these are not confident people. The confident people are the people that whisper, but speak very, very with confidence.
So, what kind of body language would someone have if they've got a fear of rejection?
Well, you can tell, can't you? If you're listening to someone talk, if you're at a party and there's a group of people, you have a gut feeling, don't you?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it.
Okay, well, I'm sure it's something that you're going to look at now.
What, someone that is bit not very what? But then
There are some people who appear to be really, really confident, but behind the scenes they're not. So now you're going through your list of friends. Okay. So next time you're at a party, just be aware.
There'll be a long time to wear at a party, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's very interesting.
Just going back to lockdown, there are some people who had phobias before lockdown that were addressed. So they're now fixed. So they now go into lockdown. They are now frightened that when they come out of lockdown, that these fears will start tumbling back because they haven't been practicing their newfound skills. So this is a very unique situation that we all find ourselves in throughout the world.
So, like emetophobia, could someone that has a fear of rejection easily not realize that they have emetophobia then?
Yeah, there are a lot of people that have that particular phobia that don't even realize they have it. And it's only when I start asking my weird questions, they think, okay, yeah, maybe I have.
So can you remind us what are the weird questions you ask?
You know the weird questions.
I want to be asked fear of rejection questions.
Okay, are you a perfectionist?
I don't think so.
Okay, do you have a fear of failure?
No.
Okay. Do you like to be aware of what other people think of you?
Less so now, but I used to.
Okay, do you have a fear of embarrassment?
Not really, like maybe a little, not really.
Okay, fine, but then, okay, so you passed the test. Okay, so you passed the test. So you.
I think and we discovered this, that Sylvia's saying yes.
I'm not commenting, Sylvia, because she had a go at me when I was walking the other day. Okay, she had a go at me, so I'm not saying anything, Sylvia.
But I think for me, and I don't know if we can cover this actually, is fear of abandonment, which I didn't even realize, because like not liking to sleep out, and like not like I love home, so I think for me it's more of like I like being around people again.
Yeah, but that's different. So that's not.
Yeah, that's not rejection, and that's fear. That's like a fear of being, I don't know.
It's not. It isn't. It isn't what we're talking about today. Listen. You passed the test. There's someone on there.
I don't have a fear of rejection, but maybe we can cover like all of that stuff, like when you children that don't like to sleep out and don't like to be away from their mums and stuff like that. That's a fear of abandonment, right? That's
a fear of abandonment, yeah. And that there are some overlaps, but it's not specifically the same thing.
It's funny because I've always associated with a fear of rejection in a relationship, but it's also jobs, schools.
Yeah, it comes into every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
It really does. It's social, it's family, It's relationships. Yeah.
What about talking of codependency? What if you someone has a brand new boyfriend, bringing them into the family? Is it a fear of them being rejected? Do you know what I mean? Or is it literally yourself?
No, it's yourself.
So
it's
meeting
a fear,
their family and being rejected.
Yeah, and you know, for fear of rejection doesn't necessarily need to be that person leaving them. I mean, if you and I were talking now, and my phone rang, and I'm going, yeah, no, I'm listening to you. No, Zoe, carry on. I'm listening to you. No, carry on. Okay, how does that sound? That's rejection.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, but sometimes people count that as being rude. But there are some people that get very, very anxious when someone does that, because they're not giving their being given full attention and support.
So people pleasing is a massive part of.
People pleasing is huge, absolutely huge. But people pleasers are necessary in this world.
Why?
Because they do the jobs that some other people don't want to do.
Oh.
And they go the extra mile.
I know people pleasers. I'm not one of them.
But every company, I guess, has to have a people pleaser.
Wow, not if you heal the world.
Because those are the people that, I mean, sometimes, you know, we've been speaking today about fear of failure, fear of being rejected. There are some people that I've treated that have a fear of failure and a fear of success at the same time, which sounds a little bit of a contradiction. There was a lady I treated quite a while ago, who is a famous actress. And every year she wanted to be recognized in the top 6, and the nominations are. She wanted to be one of those top 6, but she never ever wanted to win. And one year she did win. And she phoned me in such a panic saying, what do I do now? Because now the bar has been raised from here to here. I've now won. What are the British public going to expect from me next year? If I don't win next year, then I'm going to be seen as a failure. And people are going to not, you know, come and see my movies and stuff like that. So sometimes a fear of failure can literally fall in very nicely with the fear of success as well.
So what would your advice be to parents with young children, or like future parents, to avoid their child to have a fear of rejection? What could you do?
To always be there emotionally, to be there present for the child. A number of people, and these are quite young people that have come to see me, are remembering scenes where they're saying that their mum was sitting up in bed reading a story, but she had her phone in the other hand. So she's reading the story, but she is checking her phone.
To be present.
So you've got to be present. It's not just about being physically present, it's about being emotionally present.
Right. Wow.
What will you have to do? And I say this to everyone that asks me about, I'm bringing up a young baby. What book should I read? I say, what book should I read on child psychology? I said, don't read any books. Put yourself in the shoes of that young child. What does that young child want? That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
That young child wants love, attention. They want you to be present.
And I guess it's remembering a child doesn't have the complex thinking yet. So for them, mummy's not there, I'm crying, mummy's not there, mummy doesn't want me.
Mummy didn't want me, mummy's never coming back, I've been a bad girl.
Wow.
It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But the child then carries that through into adulthood.
What about picking your child up late from school and they're the last ones in the playground?
That's a no-no, an absolute no-no.
That makes me want to cry.
Yeah, it's
These
bad.
things are like common. Those kind of things are common sense, but it's like
not to a child, not to a child.
No, for a parent not to do, but there are some things where it can happen. A tiny thing like that Lego thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't really compare your children, but it could be any. It could be hearing your stories. It just shows it could be the smallest things that are not even your fault.
It's a minefield. It's an absolute minefield. But what I really wanted to just emphasize today, there may be some people who are listening today who are in relationships that they shouldn't be in. And their friends are saying to them, you know, dump them. But that's not what they're hearing. They're hearing, you're going to be all on your own. That's what they're hearing. And they'd rather be in that relationship having a degree of control, which they don't have, but they think they have a degree of control, than being alone.
Whoa. But then, isn't that a fear of loneliness?
Yeah, and once again, that overlaps into a fear of, loneliness, abandonment, and rejection. Those three things are kind of, there's a lot of overlap between those three things.
Wow.
But being in a relationship where you know it's not going anywhere, and all your friends are telling you this guy's no good for you, what it's doing, you're the one who's in control. And when you want to, you will dump that particular person and move on to probably you'll follow the same pattern.
Wow. It's very interesting.
It's probably one of the most common things that I have to treat people for.
Really?
But that's not what they come to see me about. They come to see me with stress and anxiety. But then once we start asking questions, are you a perfectionist? Do you have a fear of failure? And then suddenly it all comes out. And then when they're in hypnosis, then the truth really, really comes out.
Wow. So hopefully this live will kind of spread awareness of, because maybe you don't even realize you have a fear of rejection. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't realize.
No one wants to be rejected. But if there's a fear of being rejected, that's when it becomes a problem.
Right.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Let me check my questions, what I haven't asked you. I wrote some more down. Hang on. I'm so engrossed in your stories.
I'll tell you one more story. I'll tell you what, whilst you're looking, I'll tell one more story. About 8 years ago, I got a call from a guy who's a famous musician. And he'd waited his whole life for one phone call. And that phone call came one particular day. He picked up his mobile phone and Eric Clapton, do you know who Eric Clapton is? He's a very, very famous guitarist. He said to him, please, will you play in my band when we tour next? So he'd waited his whole life for this particular phone call. What did he say?
I'm assuming no.
He said, no, I'm not good enough. Yeah, the guy really is good enough. But he had this fear of performing with Eric Clapton, touring the world and being rejected. And it all came, and whilst he was in hypnosis, he went back to a scene. He was 5 or 6 years old in his bedroom playing his instrument. And the dad burst in and the dad said, put that rubbish down. You're never going to make any money. Just get downstairs now and do your sums, do your times tables. You're going to be an accountant like your dad. So when he plays his instrument and the audience are going crazy because he's fantastic, all he hears, he just hears his dad.
Right.
That's all he does. He just hears his dad's voice.
That's really sad. I have one more question.
Okay.
Can someone with a fear of rejection have a successful romantic relationship?
If they have some treatment, yes. But
so does it ever go away? Can it go away, or is it something
it can go away. It depends on whatever happened when they were children. But if they're in a relationship and they begin to trust that person, and it's obviously very difficult for them to trust based upon what happened to them when young. But if they're in a relationship and they begin to trust, they begin to let go, and the person that they're with is very sympathetic and very loving and very caring and knows about their history, then yes, there is a chance. There is a chance that they can do it without any therapy.
Wow. Because it is trust, isn't it? That's a massive part, I guess.
Because trust was broken when they were young, and they record that in their subconscious, and it then causes their subconscious, which is the protection mechanism within the brain, to want to keep them safe.
Wow. It's amazing how the mind works.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are there any more questions?
I don't think so. I've asked all my questions. But thank you so much. That is so interesting. And I hope whoever's watching and you think you may have it, you know who to go to.
And next week, we're going to do insomnia. Okay,
I think that's a really common thing.
I think I'm going to sleep on that one. Okay, all right. Well, all right. Listen, I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you so much. It's been so interesting.
Okay, my pleasure. All right.
Evening.
So see you next week, and we're going to do insomnia.
Yes.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.